just a bit of context. So I probably created my LinkedIn account 20 years ago, and I've only really been active on it, I would say about 8 months or so. In the last maybe month or so, I've had other clients reach out to me and say, hey, I know you're a LinkedIn influencer, so we'd really like to pick your brain about how to get started. And my initial reaction was, thank you. I have no idea what I'm fucking doing.
Once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Experience Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as we explore how digital can help enhance the customer and employee experience. My goal is to share what my guests and I have learned over the years so that you can get the insights that you need to evolve your own digital programs. If you'd like more info, need to get in touch, or sign up for the weekly companion newsletter that has additional articles and resources in it, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Digital CX Podcast. My name is Alex Turkovich. It's so great to have you back this week and every week. This is episode 69, and we've got a very special guest for you today in Bob Mathers, who you probably know from LinkedIn CS circles. He is no stranger to the LinkedIn selfie. What's behind the LinkedIn selfie is a ton of incredible content that he puts out on LinkedIn on a regular basis, because he is such a wealth of knowledge and experience. He's a consultant. He's also a podcast host. He has a non-CS podcast called Growth Mixtape, in which he has amazing, wonderful conversations with just people who've been through stuff. And so it's really cool. We talk about that, a bunch of CS stuff. We talk about personal branding a little bit. And I just really enjoyed this conversation with Bob, and I hope you do too. Bob, how do we first get introduced? I don't remember who introduced us. Was it Rob that introduced us?
It's hilarious that you mentioned that, because I was trying to figure that out too.
Yeah. I think it was Rob Zambito.
Because because Dylan and Rob and JP had invited me on to their Lifetime Value podcast, the Daily Stand-Up.
Yep.
And you're right. Then I think it led Rob to introduce me to you. Then I think you introduced me to Sarah Roberts, who I also love and talk to. So yeah, it's been an interesting path that's led us here.
It's like, the CS network.
And there is some good that can come out of LinkedIn, even though it can be a really isolating and lonely place sometimes. It can result in conversations like this.
It's definitely the necessary evil.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's necessary evil. And like, you're a very prolific LinkedIn poster. You subscribe to the selfie video post as well. I like to post kind of selfie video, but you also I think there's something to, okay, there's probably a whole thing we could get into about this whole thing, because I've been on this thing recently about how digital communication, apropos digital customer success, doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a human involved in that communication. And I think what better way to communicate digitally but still be human than to like do a quick video of yourself or have a selfie with like that expresses kind of emotion as part of the post. But I think you subscribe firmly to that kind of philosophy, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you come across me on LinkedIn, I do selfies on most of my posts, and I'm trying to post 4 to 5 times a week. There was a post that I responded to like a month or two ago that said, what's with all the selfies? Why is LinkedIn turning into Instagram? And I responded to that. And there is some method behind it. When I've really only been active on LinkedIn for maybe 8 or 9 months, but I connected with somebody. Her name is Casey Jones. I connected with her. Her content was amazing. And when I finally realized that I needed some help, she's the one that I reached out to. But when she did basically selfies with every post as well. And when I got on the call with her, it was like we were continuing a conversation that we had been having for months, even though it was the first time we met. And I'm like, yeah, that's a perfect extension. Like that's how I want my audience and the people that I connect with to feel. I want to say, yeah, this conversation was exactly what I was expecting. You're exactly who I thought you'd be. And there was something just really eye-opening about that. So I stole
because
that
you'd
from her.
seen her posters. Yeah, you'd seen her basically having the conversation with you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I'm sure there are people that reside in the camp that's like, why are people posting selfies? Blah, 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 blah. What's next? Pictures of your food or whatever.
Well,
Like,
and I'm not going
that
to lie,
makes,
it did feel a little cringy. And it's just, on the list of things that I had a fear of things that I had to overcome putting myself
yeah,
out there more.
yeah. That's fascinating. Well, look, we kind of jumped right into it, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and who you are and what you do and what led you to CS and all of that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, I work with founders, CEOs, and CS leaders. I do a combination of coaching and consulting to help them retain customers, grow customers, and enable their sales organizations with the customer stories that they need to accelerate their logo sales, even on the new business side. So those are really the three main financial motivations behind customer success that most leaders have. And if you're thinking, well, that sounds like 100,000 other people that I see out there, you're not wrong. I've got a different collection of experiences and tools and templates. And, I put myself out there a lot because at the end of the day, we just need to connect with people. And one day when people need help, I might be on the short list of people they call, and we'll see if, there's a fit. And I've been doing this long enough that to a large extent, I get to, work with people that I love working with, doing work that I love to do. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. And you're also on the list of CS folks who have a podcast. However, your podcast is not CS focused really at all, maybe. But Growth Mixtape is a really cool show that like digs into like unique people's lives and whatnot. I haven't listened to all of them, but the few I've listened to have been like really impactful. I still think about them to this day.
Well, that really means a lot. Yeah, well, a podcast was on the list of things that I had. I wanted to kind of identify fears of mine and kind of try to knock them down. And I sat down, I thought, what do I want a podcast to be about? And my only rule was I don't want it to be about customer success.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure I had much to offer. And I thought about the kinds of podcasts that I really found most rewarding. And they were often from conversations and guests from people that I had never heard of, that I'd never normally come across, but that I had so much to learn from. And so I thought, that'd be interesting. What if I could string together a list of guests that I would never normally come across? I've talked to musicians and professional athletes and scientists and
former
at some point
officers.
in everyone. Yeah, exactly. And that have had just amazing experiences. I think by the time people listen to this, probably listen to, you'll probably be 60 episodes in at least. The most interesting thing that's happened is it is about customer success. Like it really is. It does come full circle to overcoming whatever obstacles stand in your way. And sometimes it's ideas, which your podcast, for example, will give people great insight to, but sometimes we have the ideas. We just don't have the confidence, courage, creativity, whatever it is to do anything with them. It's the magic combination of those two things that I'm really enjoying.
And the humanness of it,
Yes.
That's like the story. Like, I think a lot of times we go into these customer conversations forgetting that we're actually speaking with humans.
Yes. Well, that's so true. In fact, I just had a post about that this morning because I'm kind of binging on a book called A Curious Mind by Brian Grazer, who co-founded Imagine Entertainment with Ron Howard.
Oh,
and he talks about these curiosity.
He's the guy with the spiky hair, right?
Yes. Yeah. Kind of the weird looking guy, right? He talks about that too. And just and I don't think that definitely the pandemic didn't help, right? Because it seemed to be, there was more room in business meetings for these more personal conversations. But now we get on a Zoom and it's like, okay, let's spend 90 seconds saying hello and talking about the weather. And then it's like, what's our agenda? And we're plowing through and it's all about outcomes and agenda. And there's so much we've lost.
Yeah, it's true. One thing I love to lead off with on calls is like, red, amber, green. Like sometimes I'll be like, hey, I'm kind of amber today. How are you feeling? And it kind of opens you up. It humanizes it a little bit. It's not just the weather. It's like, how you doing today? And let's be honest about something. So I'm half Austrian, so I go back every once in a while. And one of the things that I'm always taken aback, like if you go to Europe, but specifically Vienna, if you ask somebody how they're doing, you better be ready for an
Mm,
honest answer, and you better be ready to have a conversation about it. While that's like very jarring to the American and I guess the North American psyche, like it's kind of nice in a way, but also like, oh my God.
that's awesome. And I have noticed, I just want to acknowledge you for that because I have noticed in our conversations, you usually do start off with that. And it's really memorable, which means it's
Mm,
something that not a lot of people do. And it really gives me pause. I'm like, oh, and I don't think he's asking me like, hey, how you doing? It's like, I think
right.
he's really asking me, how am
I want to
I
know.
doing? Now, have you ever said I'm a red?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or sometimes I'll be like, hey, I'm not feeling this today.
Hmm.
And I have a lot of respect for people that it's interesting because I have a lot of respect for people who do that. But also, there's this like, I think if you go into certain conversations and you're in the red, I don't see how that can be productive unless it's a conversation with somebody that you really trust and
Right.
like and can confide in, and maybe they're in the red too, and y'all can just
Right.
get each other to the amber. I've bowed out of conversations because I was like, hey, I can't do this right now.
Wow. Good for you.
It's hard to do in hustle culture.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I really like that idea, though. I'd love to test that out.
With regards to kind of your background, is you're obviously you're Canadian based, you're in Ontario. It's probably safe to assume that you played hockey as a kid. I think I did see some like hockey coaching that you did at some point as well. Do you still play, or do you still coach, or do you still involved in hockey at all?
So, what's really quite hilarious about that is I never played hockey growing up.
You
I
didn't.
don't remember why I didn't, but I'll never forget being in grade 6, like gym class, when we go to the arena and everybody straps on their skates. And I had been on skates before, but I could skate from one side to the other and slam into the boards because I couldn't stop or I couldn't turn. And I was never cool. There were a lot of things that I wasn't included in growing up, even out, going through college and everything. So, but I've got 2 sons. Both sons were in hockey. And so when
Mm,
I was maybe 30 years old, I took I joined a class to learn how to play hockey. And it was me and a number of new Canadians. And wow, it just gave me such a incredible respect for the sport. But it was funny. You're right. I did coach on my younger son's team and
mm,
probably both of my son's team. It was just a way to get a little bit more involved in all the time
yeah,
that we were spending there. I had absolutely nothing to offer. And so, if you do these
especially in the
sports,
stopping department.
no, for sure in the stopping department, but it was just for a way for me to get closer to it. But you get to a point where they do actually need real coaches. Like they don't just need
Hmm.
somebody to
Sure.
tie their skates before the game or refill their water bottles or tell them that it's okay if they missed on a breakaway, or at some point they need coaches. And that's where I had to let the real people that knew
Yeah.
something about hockey take over. But I've
Which,
learned a lot about it and I am a big fan.
yeah, and that translates to kind of current state where, at some point, a lot of companies just need a real consultant. And that's where you come in, right?
Wow. That's a brilliant segue. Yeah. That's really good.
Well, I mean, a big part of what you do is you help orgs really focus on and drive growth and those kinds of things. And I wanted to dig into that a little bit from the digital perspective because it's a digital CX podcast. Are there go-to things that you often see are amiss, or go-to recommendations that you have when you go in and advise these companies and these founders and leaders from a digital perspective?
Yeah. It's a great question. Obviously, it really depends on what stage they're in because I tend to work with a lot
Yeah.
of early stage companies and then scaling companies that are 50 million ARR and above. Certainly for the early stage, I do think of maybe not the only two, but two of the big pillars of the digital CS stuff is data and technology. And I find that
Hmm.
a lot of people really only think about the technology side because it's just so easy to go sign up for a tool and plug it into your website. And all of a sudden you've got some onboarding workflows and
Yeah.
you check
Right.
that box and move on to the next thing. Right. And so I think the biggest miss is what data underlies, like how are you informing what to do and when, and do you know what good adoption looks like on hour 1 after sign up, a day
Yeah.
after sign up, 3 days after sign up, 5 days after sign up. And so that tells you where people are getting stuck or what you really need those technologies to do once you've got them plugged in.
Yeah, that's a great point. So many people think of digital as like it's an email flow, it's a welcome email, it's a pre-renewal, something or other. But like, dude, it's so much more than that. And I think in a lot of organizations, digital and CS ops are almost like synonymous, and sometimes they're the same team, right? That are running all this
Yeah.
stuff, because you got to have the data to support your digital motions, but then also you want to make sure you're pulling out the insights and the data to support the program, support your CSM, support your executive conversations, and all that stuff.
I'm curious because I love sitting on this side of the table of the podcast because I do get to do it every once in a while, but not so often. What are the biggest misses you see on the digital side?
Data.
Yeah.
I mean, so I have this thing called the digital sweet spot, and you hit on two of the three. It's like picture a Venn diagram, and the center is the sweet spot. And, in it, I talk about data being one pillar, automation being the other one. And so, you're akin to technology, I suppose, and then customer journey being the other one. And so to answer your question seriously, though, a lot of times, there will be some technology stack that's been purchased to help to do the automation. Okay, great. You have the tools that you can do. Ideally, that would be the last step. You don't necessarily have the data to support it. You haven't spent a lot of time really figuring out what your happy path is. Definitely not like per persona or per industry and those and I think those two things are definitely like the table stakes. To back it up even further, a lot of times orgs haven't really figured out exactly what they want to achieve out of a digital program, right? They do the whole thing of not starting with the goals. Like, what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve with this whole thing? And then out of that is like, okay, where does this fit into the customer journey? And out of that is like, okay, what data do we need to support that? And then comes like, all right, how do we put this in place?
Yeah. And certainly I love the way you put that. And I do think, obviously, you'd think that the technology would come last. It's usually the thing that comes first. Yeah. And then sometimes it's like, well, we got to find a way to justify our investment in this. Or is this the right tool? It's like, I don't even know if it's the right tool because you didn't really decide what you wanted it to do or how we're going to measure success. So then you're in the business of kind of untangling things instead of just doing it.
Yeah. Or you walk into a situation where the predecessor has done a whole bunch of stuff and you're like, trying to figure it all out. And why was this decision made? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's super fun. Or, as a consultant too, like coming into those situations where you're really trying to get a quick handle on, what's the current state and what's really happening on the ground level. I would imagine that, you're having done it for so many years, your skills on discovery around those things are pretty keen.
Yes and no. And that's a really interesting question. I've always got to fight against this kind of validation bias because you're right. I have been doing this a long time, and I'm not 90 seconds into a conversation where I'm like, yep, I've heard this 1,000 times. Like, oh my God, I can't believe we're having this conversation again. Right. But I'm really not doing anybody any favors by leaning into that because it's very easy to go, oh yeah, just wait for my turn to talk. And then I'm going to tell you everything that I think you should do and there's always a reason it's that way. What is working about that, and really forcing myself to kind of slow down and understand more of the context because the things that worked for me might not work for you. The things that didn't work for me might work for you. Like, it's much more complicated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I very quickly find myself trying to battle against that bias that I think we all have.
Hey, I want to have a brief chat with you about this show. Did you know that roughly 60% of listeners aren't actually subscribed to the show on whatever platform they're listening to it on? Now, as you know, algorithms love likes, follows, subscribes, comments, all of that kind of stuff. So if you get value out of the content, you listen regularly, and you want to help others to discover the content as well, please go ahead and follow the show, leave a comment, leave a review. Anything that you want to do there really helps us to grow organically. as a show. And while you're at it, go sign up for the companion newsletter that goes out every week at digitalcustomersuccess.com. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I guess it also depends on who you're working with and what environment you're working with, because you can't always sit there and do 5 whys around every corner and really analyzing something to death. Sometimes the best thing to do is gather the information you have, make a quick judgment call on what you need to do. But I think sometimes the enemy of progress is overanalyzing, trying to figure out how it's broken or what led us there. Is like, no, we're just going to wipe the table clean and start fresh.
For sure. And you're right. It's certainly an art in sort of listening and sharing some stories and things that have worked and things threads we might pull on. And there's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
So it's something you learn over time.
Yeah, exactly. Are there some digital motions that you've seen in your clients or you've helped clients build, or things that you've seen in the wild that you are particularly excited about, or you're like, oh, that was really cool?
I'm definitely working with some clients that are doing some really innovative things. For example, a customer portal that houses a success plan. So our objectives together and our measures. So that's really on the strategic side, because right now, I will tell you, it's very disjointed from their sales force, from their support, right? From their marketing and their email campaigns. So the vision of how this will work is really impressive. And that vision is even something that I don't think most companies have gotten their heads around. And I learned 90% of what I know from working with clients. So every client is doing a lot of amazing things and things they need help with. That's just one of the examples. Interestingly enough, that digital motion is owned by marketing, not by
Oh,
CS.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. That brings to mind something that I've marveled at a lot recently, which is why CSPs in general don't really have a consistent customer facing aspect to them. Like, you think of, most CSPs, there might be the opportunity to share something or other, but they don't really have a strong kind of customer facing thing like ever after, kind of portal platform kind of situation. It's all very internally focused, maybe by design too. But if I scratch my head a lot as to why that is, because you would think that the natural extension of a customer success platform would be to be customer facing,
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever thought of that. Now that you mention it, just seems so painfully obvious that would be something.
Yeah.
I have worked with clients that had that ability, but were always reluctant because maybe it's because they don't have confidence in their data and they're terrified that the client will be exposed to something that they don't want them to see.
Yeah. It could be.
And so that fear of, oh my God, can you imagine what would happen if one customer even saw this, shuts the whole thing down.
It does really quickly. And I mean, that's why we don't see more people doing, virtual QBRs and all that kind of stuff, is because, again, it goes back to one of those pillar pieces of not having the data to support it necessarily.
Yeah.
Which is a common thread. It was interesting. There's a lot of motions out there that I've been encountering that do a really good job of combining the human and the digital together. One of them I saw recently was QuickBooks, actually. We were setting up online for the side hustle situation, and they offered, they had a nice digital flow, and their in-product stuff is good, and although they have really good documentation. I mean, Intuit is quite known for their CS stuff. But then we got the opportunity to set up a structured onboarding call. And this was for their $20, $30 product, they're literally throwing humans into the mix to help with that onboarding flow. And I thought that was so amazing, because they're losing money on it. I mean, I can't even imagine what the break-even point is if you're literally spending an hour with a $20 a month customer, and all the tech spend behind that and whatnot. But I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you've encountered similar things, or, you have some of your clients that are doing similar things around onboarding, but I thought that was oh, cool.
Yeah. Well, what's most interesting about that, as I hear you talk about that, is I wonder how many different things they tried before they landed,
Yeah.
where before they realized that this thing that on paper looks like the worst investment they would ever make
Yeah.
is actually going to, pay for itself
They
or
got
something. And
funding
their
for a
average
team.
customer.
I mean,
Yeah.
there was a
Yeah.
business case made somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. And how many different things they've tried. They tried different, completely digital motions, or back in the day, they probably had people doing it.
Yeah.
And the pendulum swings back and forth until they find this sweet spot in the middle, which is just kind of a learning process that I think everybody has to go through. I see a lot of companies try to move too quickly to digital.
Mm-hmm.
I see companies hold on to human-led experiences for too long that obviously don't scale and sort of collapse. But I am noticing more and more of those interactions, not the way that you described it, but at least for like a human to answer a chat.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm halfway through onboarding and I can enter a chat and talk to somebody, and that person knows where I am, knows who I am because I'm logged in, knows what I've tried,
Yeah.
and is there to help me get over the next 2 or 3 things I need to do to get unstuck.
Yeah. Digital, but human. Digital can support the humans. In that agent who's manning the chat, to your point, doesn't have to go, ask who it is and verify the account and look up stuff. They just know, and they know what page you're looking at and all that kind of stuff. And they do that because you have some pretty cool tech behind the scenes powering that stuff. It's an exciting age that we live in, I think.
Well, yeah. And one of the definitions of digital customer success, I might even have shared this with you with this client that I'm working with now, had some really interesting language. And because it's led out of the marketing organization, they agonized over every word.
Yeah.
Which I really value. And so they're talking about how digital experiences, I wrote it down, digital experiences connect, reinforce, and elevate the interpersonal and offline experiences with our brand.
Interesting.
And I love the connect, reinforce, and elevate,
Uh-huh.
and then the interpersonal and offline.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a lot to what you were just saying, tech touch or whatever we were calling it back then. It was like the high touch customers never got emails. They never got campaigns. They never got anything.
Yeah.
It was just the 1 to 600 customers that got everything through email.
Right.
And there's just a blend there now that everybody's trying to figure out.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, this stuff is your brand voice. So in a way, it makes sense that the marketing team is owning some of that because it is the brand voice, and I think those things can live in multiple different places and still be successful. I think that's interesting. On the QuickBooks thing, a funny anecdote is that at the end of this onboarding call, I asked this lady who was doing the call, I was like, hey, do you mind if I ask you a couple questions?
For sure.
and she was like, okay, weirdo. Like, no, I do this for a living. Like, I want to know, like, how's your team structure? Like, what were you hired for and all this kind of stuff. She was like totally not having it. She wanted to get on to the next call and be done with it.
Right. I'm measured on, I don't have time for this.
I don't have time for this bullshit.
Just give me a 5 on the survey that you're going to get in a couple of seconds. I'm happy.
I need my smoke break. I do want to go back to like what we were talking about initially before we even introduced you and all that kind of stuff about like LinkedIn and personal branding and things like that. I think, you have put a lot of conscious effort into branding yourself and getting yourself out there and posting on LinkedIn, the necessary evil or whatnot. And having put so much energy towards it, I was curious if you might share some advice or thoughts on people who are thinking about doing the same thing or wanting to really brand themselves a little bit more. What kind of advice might you give them?
I do have 2 or 3 helpful takeaways.
Always post selfies.
I know you're all about those and I will commit to those. But before I get there, just a bit of context. So I probably created my LinkedIn account 20 years ago, and I've only really been active on it, I would say about 8 months or so. In the last maybe month or so, I've had other clients reach out to me and say, hey, I know you're a LinkedIn influencer, so we'd really like to pick your brain about how to get started. And my initial reaction was, thank you. I have no idea what I'm fucking doing. So the fact that you think I do, I'm flattered. That does feel good.
Okay. Here's the deal. Sure, you've got a selfie on there, whatever. And the selfie police can go to hell. The content that you're posting is based on your experience. It's well thought out. It's well written. It's well paced. It's readable. It's digestible, really relevant, really timely content. But I think that's the edge. And that's why you've been successful at putting yourself out there, is because it's actually like super relevant stuff.
Well, I do really appreciate that. And that means a lot to me. It's definitely been a journey. I wasn't really sure why anybody would care what I had to say. What new do I have to offer the conversation? And there was a lot of reflection and kind of work on what do I want to be known for? And some of it is eventually just overcoming that fear of kind of putting yourself out there. And that's something that eventually, if this is important to people, they'll have to get over. I would say if people want to do it, spend some time on your personal brand, spend some time on that profile, right? Like, because if you start commenting and people start and your profile views will go out, like what are people going to see? What is your banner? What's that tagline? What are they going to read about your experience? I mean, that's kind of like table stakes stuff. But I just started commenting on, you know, a reflection or a personal experience of mine. And that really helped me get my confidence up. But an interesting thing happens every once in a while. You'd be like, oh, that's actually a really good comment. And so you just copy and paste that comment into somewhere else. And that can be a post for someday. You kind of work on that. And so I think that's the path that I took. LinkedIn is really good at making you feel like everybody's got the answers, but you just take some comfort in the fact that even the people who seem to have it all figured out are still just kind of, I mean, undoubtedly, there are some people that really have got their shit together, but most of us are just kind of experimenting. And find 2 or 3 people that you're just drawn to their content because it's authentic, it speaks to you, and borrow as much as you can from them. Because if you're trying to listen to 10 or 20 people, you just get in this cycle of churn, and you know, everybody's contradicting each other and you just get lost.
It's less of a conversation and more of a shouting match.
Well, there's lots of
Oh man, that's cool. Well, as we kind of round down here, I do have a couple of additional questions that I like to ask everyone, which the first one is, what are you paying attention to? What's in your content diet? You mentioned Brian Grazer's book, but...
Good question. There's been a couple of books that have had a big impact on me recently. One is Dopamine Nation. I forget the author, but it's really just about how the society we live in is kind of engineered to keep us addicted to notifications and social media and alcohol and whatever other vices you might be susceptible to. But I really enjoyed that because it's really eye-opening. And it's a bit like that awesome Netflix show about social media.
Yes. God, that was scary.
Yeah. The Social Dilemma.
Social Dilemma.
Or am I getting that
No,
wrong?
You got it. Yeah. I think it is.
That was I really love that. And the other one is A Creative Act by Rick Rubin, which is sort of my Bible. I would get up every morning and read like a couple passages, and it would just set my intent. And then I would go for a walk.
Yeah. And
I would just let those words kind of inspire random thoughts, and sometimes they'd be useful. I don't know what it is about that book, but it's
it's great. I have one on my bedside table, so I'll read it once in a while. And then I got the audiobook version because it's Rick Rubin reading it, and Rick Rubin has this like
so cool
kind of like chill vibe about him.
Oh,
and
man,
so it's like almost meditative.
I think he would be at your list of dinner party guests. I mean, I think he's got to be on it. Just the way he talks, and he's man, there's something about that guy. And the other thing on podcasts, interesting. I usually wake up every morning and say, what am I in the mood for? I ask myself 2 questions. What am I in the mood for, and what do I need? Because sometimes I'm in the mood for something just lighthearted, but that's not really what I need. So it kind of varies between kind of meditative podcasts, just lighthearted, listen to George Clooney talk about shitting in his roommate's litter box, you know, funny stories like Smartless, or, you know, Conan's podcast or something.
Smartless is good.
Yeah, but mostly it's just about trying to stumble across conversations, kind of like what I'm trying to do with my podcast. Conversations that are kind of outside my comfort zone, people that I'd never normally come across, and see what I can learn from them. And Armchair Expert on Thursday has his Dax Shepard. They have their experts on experts. So it's not the celebrities they have the rest of the week. It's authors, scientists, and everything. And I'm fascinated by that stuff recently.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, who'd have thunk Dax Shepard would like, it's a cool show, but didn't have really him pegged for that.
Yeah, me neither. And a recent episode with him and Amy Poehler, which is super vulnerable and honest. I'm like, God, man, I could listen to this forever.
Yeah. Any shout outs you want to give?
I really should have some shout outs.
One of my favorite sayings in life is don't should yourself.
Yeah. Well, then I won't, because I could come to whoever's pops into my head, and then 10 minutes from now after we
You'll be
hang up,
kicking
I'm like,
yourself.
oh my God, how could I?
That's
You
respectful.
can edit that out,
Yeah.
that I didn't have anybody to shout out.
I respect that.
I've got a dozen list of people that I rely on for a number of things.
If you're listening, consider yourself shouted out.
Yeah. If you said, oh, Bob Mathers and Alex, that's a conversation I got to hear.
Where can people find you, reach out to you, chat with you, engage with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. My podcast is the Growth Mixtape. It's everywhere you get your podcast fix, like this awesome podcast. BobMathers.ca is where you can learn a little bit more about me. That's usually where I'm hanging out.
That's good. Well, look, Bob, I always enjoy our conversations, and I especially enjoyed this one, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. But thanks for taking the time.
No problem. I enjoyed my 10 minutes of trying to stay still and contemplative and get my energy up for this. You're an awesome host. I really enjoy our conversations. This has been awesome.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital CX Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. It really helps us to grow and provide value to a broader audience. You can view the Digital Customer Success definition word map and get more information about the show and some of the other things that we're doing at digitalcustomersuccess.com. This episode was edited by Lifetime Value Media, a media production company founded by our good mutual friend Dylan Young. Lifetime Value aims to serve the content, video, audio production needs of the CS and post-sale community. They're offering services at a steep discount for a limited time, so navigate to lifetimevaluemedia.com, go have a chat with Dylan, and make sure you mention the Digital CX Podcast sent you. I'm Alex Turkovich. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.